what's your, like, because the whole Marty method involves paying attention to what
following
you're playing.
Chords, following chords, whatever the chord is, you have to follow it.
And
You don't have to follow it, but it makes your solos sound like they're worked out.
Right.
And they can be ad-libbed and improvised off the top of your head, but if you follow the chords, even if you do ad-lib them, they sound like, you know, you're really working them out.
Then you're saying that, so you're saying that even if you're playing in E minor, then you would go, your first thing would be to go to G major, which is relative.
Oh, that conversation,
yeah.
Okay, to take it out.
Yeah.
The most basic thing, obviously, would be play E minor, kind of a root type of thing.
Right.
Anything that's right in there, but if you want to take it to the next step up, is like move up to the relative major, which of E minor would be G major. G major type of thing.
And actually play something that sounds like it's in G.
Yeah, really G. Something that sounds really G, and that's going to be your first step above E minor. And also another way to do, a great way to do this would be have two guitars so you can hear the root pad under it, but you'll just have to imagine it. So the next step above that would be B minor.
And then if the chord sequence then went to D.
And then chord sequence went to D, you could stay in that B minor for your first relative of D.
Right. So at this point then we are actually following the chord sequence because you're now going to D, and instead of just playing it safe and playing an E minor pentatonic, you're going to D major and B minor.
Right. So like theoretically, if the chord progression goes E minor and D, you could play your solos as if it was G. And then for D, go to the B minor. So you're thinking G major and B minor, but the chords are saying E minor and D major. You follow me?
Right, no, gotcha. So
that'll give you one vibe on the whole thing.
Right.
That's blanketing the whole thing. I like to change a million times in between. But to get the basic idea, ground floor, it's like, if it's E minor, it's D major, you can say, okay, today I'm going to pretend it's G major and B minor. And just hit those first basic relative chords there.
Right.
And when you do that, you got to also be aware of what the root is that you're searching for and have target notes in there. Because if you play off the relative too much, it's going to sound like he's playing off the relative. It's real cheesy, you know. If you get back to the home base enough times, it sounds like you know what you're doing. But if
so you've basically you've got to know not only where you're going, but get there at the right time. You can't. If you get there eventually, you sound like some cheeseball just going, "Oh, this is relative, so I'm playing over top of it."
Right. Of course, people who don't know music wouldn't figure that out, but it just sounds amateurish, you know.
Right.
And like guys, like a lot of guys, what they do is like they play in the fifth below, like if it's an E, you know, they'll just play an E. Right, and they stay in there so long, it just sounds like, wow, he's just playing like a 7th frets below, you know.
Yeah, because they actually get so lost in playing in the relative that they actually,
exactly.
in their mind, the root is now B and not E.
Exactly. So the whole thing, that's a good point, is you do not want to get lost in the relative. You want to be firmly, you know, deeply, you got to understand what the root is and know how to get to it at all times, or get to a note in the root chord, you know, B and F or E. You know, you want to be able to get to an E, B, or a G like real easily from wherever you're at, you know, or a 7th or whatever.
Yeah.
And just be able to be aware of your root chord at all times, even if you're totally outside in the relative and playing weird shit. You know, you got to be aware of the root place and how to get there from anywhere. And you don't have to go far. It doesn't matter where you are. You can always find a note that's like going to be in your root.
Right. So you can actually like playing outside.
So I mean, if you can even be doing something totally obnoxious. E. You know what I mean?
Right.
There's an E everywhere. You know? You can do something totally meaningful. Get to something American after that, you know what I mean? I use that term, not because you're English, but I mean, like something that doesn't sound like it's from Mars or something. You know what I mean? Just get to something normal, and then you can do anything before it. The key is how well you know your base, your home base, and how to get to it.
Yeah, I think, didn't we come up with the analogy last time you were saying, it's okay to go, it's okay to drive through a strange neighborhood, but don't end up.
Yeah, make sure you know the correct. Yeah, that's right. Make sure you know how to get home.
Don't get shot.
Be in a bad neighborhood and if you hang out there too long, you're going to get shot. But if you slide in and out there, you know you're a cool guy for going to that bad neighborhood. But when you get home, you're a hero because you made it home. Yeah, this is getting right exactly what I would say. If you drive through the bad neighborhood and get home safely, then you can say I'm rad because I made it through that bad neighborhood. But if you stay in that bad neighborhood too long and you get shot, then you're definitely not cool.
Yeah, so if you hang out in the bad neighborhood long enough that you actually think you're part of that and go and have a beer somewhere.
There you go.
Then get your ass kicked. Yeah.
That's right. That's right. It's all about metaphors today.
Yeah, certainly. So you're saying whilst I've got you, if we can spend a couple of minutes, so you talk about like paying attention to the chords below. So how that was another conversation we were having, talking about as opposed to just solving in one scale.
Well, I think we're going to wind up talking about Hotel California here.
Yeah,
because this is a progression that everybody knows, and it's not even about taking it outside at this point. It's about following those basic chords.
Right.
And it goes like here to this. Well, I'll play a solo. This has got to be the goal of every guitar player, is to be able to solo melodically against a chord progression that's only in their head.
Right.
You don't have any buddies playing guitar for you. You hear the chord progression. So right now, I'll give you an example. I'll just wing something playing against the Hotel California progression.
Yeah, so you're actually imagining the Hotel California.
And hopefully you'll be able to hear that progression through the solo.
Right.
You know. Sort of hear that progression. There's a lot of cheesy licks in there, but the idea was following every chord. You know what I mean?
So if you break it down for the real beginner who would, if I transcribe that, would just go and have probably purposely drive into his bad neighborhood. Probably drive into his bad neighborhood and get shot.
Well, I didn't really go into the neighborhood at all. I kept it all real normal.
No, it was just very so what was your mindset then?
Theoretically, with what I did, if I was playing in any kind of timing, you should be able to play the chord progression back. You know what would be a good idea is if you recorded that, I could play those chords over that, and it would all match like I'm following the chords.
No,
you saw that,
yeah,
right?
I could actually hear the chord progression of it. I had it going over in my head.
So theoretically, I solo just in thin air, but I could play those chords to that song. Whatever they were, and they would fit into that because of what I was trying to keep it sort of obvious.
Right. No, you did. It was a good job.
And but that, I think, because then you don't need any other guitar players. You just got to hear the chords in your head, not just outline them. Okay, I know it's B minor here, so I have to use these notes. You got to actually hear B minor in here, going down to the fifth below that. You can't just do it all by letters and numbers.
Yeah, you can't just go, just play arpeggios over each one.
Yeah, well, that's a good exercise to do, to learn, because that's a lot of what I did in there, but that's a good technical exercise to do it, but you still have to hear the progression.
Right.
The more you hear it, the more you can like wing it and just kind of feel it and go up when you feel like going up and down when you feel like going down.
Right. So so you actually so basically your knowledge of what's supposed to be there is your band effectively.
Yeah. The more you know what's going on behind you, the more you can use that, and you won't feel like you're lost. You know what I mean? A lot of guys like, shit, I get lost all the time. Dude on the street, how do you remember all the notes that you're playing? It's just like, if it's a melody and you hear it, it's not something whether you remember to forget.
Well, I guess that's why I think what you've hit on the nail. Maybe a good analogy would be that. That's why some guys are great in a three-piece band and others aren't, because they actually make up for the fact there's not enough. Like if the bass player's just pedaling something really basic, they can actually solo in such a way that they make the listener
imagine progressions that aren't there. I mean, theoretically, if you're a bass player, you're just thumping out E. Right. With the melodies that I play, I could impose whatever chord progression all over that.
Right.
And without an actual rhythm guitar player outlining those chords.
Right.
And now all you hear is E, but like with whatever I'm soloing in there, I could totally create the vibe of a chord progression. And that's so important that is like anybody's secret weapon who chooses to use it, because most guys don't do that. They'll just like learn a couple scales.
But it's kind of like the like in the trust thing at the end, like instead of just wailing your knee, like you just play different, like you outline different.
Oh, the very ending thing where.
Yeah. Like so, as opposed to just playing a cheesy E minor pentatonic.
Right. I mean, that's what it does. I would have done just fine, but I wanted to like, there's like, so like this is a E major 7 type of thing. So B minor, which is relative to G major. And at the end I did normal. Totally normal thing, like I was saying before, winding up back in the safe territory. But it's all about that, like the more you get into the habit of following chords, it just comes out natural. So you don't want to wing it.
So you'd say probably the best exercise to do what you just did is to do exactly what you just did. Like imagine a simple chord sequence and then try and create a solo, imagining that chord sequence, so when you listen back to it you still hear the sequence.
Absolutely. And another great thing to do that's kind of an opposite of that is just solo mindlessly on a tape, record it, and make a chord progression to follow that on top of that. So like I could just record it. Whatever it is, and then I come back later and go random chords, and then I might land on something that's really kind of bitchin', something that I wouldn't have thought of normally. Right. By doing that, you're exercising your ears and what your ear is willing and capable of hearing. Because most people, their ears aren't developed enough to like hear these really outside things. You know what I mean? It just sounds like noise to them. But once you develop an ear for that, and you can hear more depth in the note choices that you use, then you can really take your solos outside. But we may be getting really deep into that whole concept. But I mean, people say, how do you get these weird note choices all the time? And where do these notes come from? And we all have the same notes. The reason is because I've developed my ears by doing that, just soloing anything on a tape and doing random chords over it and finding things that I wouldn't have done just by knowing theory, things that I've fallen on by mistake, and then analyzing that and saying, oh, that's why that sounds that way, is because I followed this chord with that, and I did these two chords together over that note. You know what I mean? And it's a lot of discovery that way. You'll hear all these weird notes. So
like a lot of it's going to be nonsense, but some of it.
You get a gem in there, and then you say, well, from now on, I'm always going to land on that particular note when that chord comes up. You know what I mean? That's how you hear. You develop your ears like that.
Have you ever done the exact opposite, like just play some wacky chord sequence and then try?
Absolutely. Try to solo over it. You know, some wacky chord sequence that wouldn't necessarily sound good, you know, and then just try to follow that. I mean, like, take another thing, you know, it's two chords, you know, like say maybe E and B flat, you know, typical kind of heavy metal passage, but nobody would think of following. sounds stupid, but I'm following both of those chords as an exercise. Just take two unrelated chords and try to do something that's semi-smooth that follows them both.
I guess the cool thing about like playing just root fifth chords is that you can
Decide the
them
major and minor.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
So you have that freedom.
And above and beyond that, you can diminish and augment them and add the numbers to them. You know,
Right,
you can
right.
decide, you know, E is going to be my. So you can go major to minor like that, and then you can totally.
Right.
Decide all that stuff if there's no deciding factor in there. Even if there is, you know, if somebody's playing a minor chord, doesn't mean you can't play major over that.
Right.
Fuck them.
There's like, do you think this is a degree where you can play something that's really? I remember years ago talking to George Lynch, and like, George can go pretty far out.
Yeah.
And he would sit down with the teacher Don Mark actually.
Yeah.
And Don would analyze what he plays. So that's sounding good. Let's analyze it. And then he'd go, no, you can't play that.
Yeah.
But you made it work.
I just
So
did.
I'll try. And he said the guy would try and play the same thing, but because he didn't mean it,
Yeah.
like the guy would land on the same note from the same point, but it was played with no conviction. Do you think there's an element of that involved in music?
Yeah, well, you're talking about a full by-the-book jazzer guy who knows
Right.
everything. And a lot of rock guys stumble on this stuff, myself included. That's way bitching, but those guys, it's not in their ears to stumble upon.
Right.
You know, and when you analyze it, it doesn't necessarily go by the books and stuff, but anything is legal at any time. You know, your ear has to be developed enough to hear it.
Right.
That's all.
But if it sounds right to you, you'll play it like you mean to play it.
Yeah, when you play it like you mean it, it doesn't really matter what it is you're playing. You know, if you mean it, you can mean the worst note choice, but if you play with conviction, it sounds a lot better that way.
I remember sitting down with a guy years ago who actually would, like at some jazz seminar, actually, the guy was fast, but one of the best guys I've ever seen. He'd be like, find me the worst note I can finish a solo on over this chord. And he'd find it, he'd finish the solo on it.
It was
And
great.
he'd make it like it was the only note you could finish on.
Right.